Hi, boys and girls. Mrs. Blackburn here. We are on day 2 of writing a tall tale. We began yesterday with the independent reading loud of Paul Bunyan by Stephen Kellogg. So today you'll have another read aloud. It was also going to be a tall tale, and we are working on writing our own. Let's look at our success criteria. Our learning goal, students will write a tall tale with character, setting, problem, solution, ending, and hyperboles. Our success criteria, I can successfully write a tall tale including character, setting, problem, solution, ending, and hyperboles. Those are all the things that we want to make sure that we include in our tall tale. So let's go ahead. I have a tall tale that I've written here, and we're going to look through it here in just a minute, but I'd like to tell you and talk to you a little bit about the tall tale that I want you to be writing. Remember, there's some things that you need to include. One, you need to have the wicked weather. So the wicked weather will be what is going to be the so-called bad guy, right? So that's going to be, and you have to come up with some kind of problem that involves that. So you looking at my example that we're going to go through here in just a second, I'm hoping that this will help you understand the format that you need to go through. You also should have completed your brainstorming, so you have those elements. Now, is it okay to change some of the things you have down in your brainstorming? Absolutely. You may not use everything that you had down, or you may want to change it a little bit. But I'd like to talk to you about some of those elements. So in the setting, the story is going to take place in contemporary times. What does that mean? Well, in contemporary times, that means in more modern days, all right? It's a more modern version of a tall tale. So the action takes place on a farm, maybe rather than the American frontier. So that is something that is a requirement, and it may actually make it easier for you to write your tall tale. The other thing I want you to look and think about is that your point of view. So this is where it actually really gets exciting and makes your tall tale more unique. So you can write the story in any kind of voice that you want. It could be a voice from a fourth grader that lives in a big city. It could be, you can adopt the voice of something else. It could be a British boy from London. It could be an Australian camper. It could be a teenager that lives in the hood. But if you do these things, for example, if you had one of your characters that was from the South, the deep South, and you wanted them to be more of a country type person, you would have them using words like y'all and howdy, etc., those kinds of things. So that's what I want you to be thinking about as you're developing your characters. So that's kind of fun, and I want you to make it fun. But this is what I do want you to think about. Okay? The other thing I want us to really think about and use are the hyperboles. So when we start dissecting the writing that I've done, we're going to be looking for those exaggerations and those hyperboles, okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at the first one. You always have to begin with an introduction, and we know this. We've written a few pieces. When we had our opinion writing piece, we always began with an introduction. Who is with me when I say London is the best city in the world, even though it is fog-bound for most part of the year? Frankly, after years of living there, I got used to its infamous fog. But that one Friday, I had about had it. So we're going to circle here in orange this part right here, because this is my introduction. And we know when we write an introduction, what needs to be in there? What needs to be in the introduction part? Good, I'm glad you remembered. We need to have our setting, right? And we need to have our character. Okay, so where is the setting? The setting is London. Okay, and this point of view right now, we have I used here, I used here, I used here. Look at all these I's in the introduction. So whose point of view is it? First person. That's right. It's first person point of view. So we're going to, this person, the narrator is the person speaking, correct? All right, let's go on. My day started out as usual. I overslept, hurriedly drank my morning cup of tea, and darted towards the door. No sooner had I opened it than I bumped into a white wall of fog. Immediately, the white creamy soup began to pour inside my house. Confused, I shut the door tight and turned on the radio to find out what was going on. Unfortunately, the fog was so thick I could not even hear the radio news. I knew I had to make it work somehow. I had promised my pupils they would have a science test that day and did not want to disappoint them by not showing up. Okay, so this next part here is where the problem comes in. Okay, we have our details, and then we have our problem. So what is the problem? We have lots and lots of fog, right? Okay, the other thing I want to look at, are, you should have heard lots of hyperboles here, right? Okay, so no sooner had I opened it than I bumped into a white wall of fog. Okay, a white wall of fog. Okay, it's not going to actually be a wall of fog, is it? So that's a hyperbole. Great. The next thing we have is the white creamy soup began to pour inside my house. That's definitely a hyperbole. And look at the imagery that it paints in your mind. If you can visualize that. This white creamy soup pouring inside your house. Okay? That's a really great one. And then we have, unfortunately, the fog was so thick I could not even hear the radio news. It's so thick that it's like earmuffs, right? It's so thick you can't even hear it. So that's a hyperbole. That's an exaggeration, right? So when you write your draft, you need to make sure you have your introduction with your setting character. You have your problem next. Your problem and your details need to include what? They need to include hyperboles, all right? So this is how we write a tall tale. Now, point of view is first person point of view. But if you remember from the brainstorming, I told you whose point of view it would be, right? Can you kind of remember that from the details that I'm giving you? It says, I overslept, I drank my cup of tea, darted towards the door. Another big hint is I had promised my pupils they would have a science test and did not want to disappoint them. Remember, it's a British science teacher. Remember this? Yeah. Okay, so that's who's telling the story. All right, let's move on to the next part. My mind was still a bit foggy from slumber when suddenly an idea popped in my head. The best way to get to school was by underground train. I grabbed a ladle and began to scoop my way to the station. On my way there, I curiously tasted a spoonful of fog. To my surprise, it had a vanilla flavor. As soon as I got to the underground station, I saw thousands of frantic Londoners desperately looking for a solution to this unexpected problem. However, I remained as cool as an English cucumber. Using my mighty teacher voice, I yelled, "Listen, everybody!" The crowd grew silent and looked at me all at once. I explained that fog is a type of stratus cloud, and clouds are moved by wind. Since currently there was no wind in London, we would have to create it ourselves by blowing. Okay, so this next section here is very important. Right here. These are more details, right? So we have lots of more details, and we have the hyperbole, more hyperbole. See if you can find those hyperboles in the story here, right? So we've got, I curiously tasted a spoonful of fog, okay? It was vanilla flavored, right? What else do we have? I grabbed a ladle and began to scoop my way to the train station. And then we also have this one. I remained as cool as a cucumber. Now, that should stand out to you maybe a little bit as not a hyperbole, but look at this word right here. As. What is that? As. The word as makes it comparison of two things. Using the word as, you're right, makes it a simile. Good. If he is saying he's as cool as an English cucumber. So you can see how important this figurative language is throughout this tall tale, and really in any writing to make it more interesting to read. And it really helps with imagery as well. So we have more of our details here. Now, going back up here, don't forget, you have to have that wicked weather. What is the wicked weather? The wicked weather is the fog, right? That's the bad guy, okay? So we've had so far our introduction with setting and character. We're telling it from the point of view of the British science teacher, right? We've got our problem, which is the wicked weather. We've got our hyperboles throughout. We've got more details with more hyperboles and figurative language. Now, let's see what happens next. Oh, we have this very important part here. And it says, since currently there was no wind in London, we would have to create it ourselves by blowing. So he's saying fog is a type of cloud, and clouds can be moved by wind. And he's saying we just need to create some wind. We need to blow. So this is what? If we have a problem in a story, we have to have a solution right there. So the solution is to blow the wind. All right, let's see what's on the back. United, we all started to blow at the top of our lungs. In no time, we pushed the fog towards the North Sea, where the sea breeze took care of it. Relieved, everybody went back to work. I arrived at the school with a sense of pride. I knew my students would be so grateful that I saved the day and the test. Later that month, we saw on the news that it rained vanilla milkshake over Denmark. I guess the sea breeze must have carried our fog away north. All right, so this part on the back is the ending. And let's think about what they included in the ending, right? They included how life went back to normal. Okay? How did life go back to normal, or normal for this tall tale, right? Because it's full of exaggerations. So the North Sea took care of everything. and he knew that the students would be happy because they had their science test. And then they saw on the news that it was raining vanilla milkshakes over Denmark. So you can't just stop writing at the end or write the end. You actually need to wrap things up and have your resolution. And we know that from our mountain and our plot structures that we've done in class. So just to review, let's go start from the top here. We have our Foggy Friday as our title. We have our introduction. Introductions always include the description of the setting and the character. We also are staying in our point of view, first person point of view. Then we go right into our problem. Your problem is going to have to, you're going to have to keep the same format. Your problem is going to be wicked weather. Mine happened to be fog. Maybe yours is a thunderstorm. Maybe yours is a tsunami. It's up to you on what your wicked weather problem is going to be. Okay? Notice we also have hyperboles. More details with more figurative language throughout makes the tall tale interesting. And tall tales have lots of exaggeration. So that's why we say hyperbole so much in the tall tales. Next, we have to have a solution to our problem, right? The reader wants to know, how was it solved? Okay? Then finally, you need to have an ending to your story. Tell the reader and tell us how life went back to normal. Okay, don't just write the end. Don't just give a one sentence, but tell us what happened. Like this says, united, we all started to blow at the top of our lungs. Okay, be creative. Think of some ideas. It might mean that if you're stuck in some parts that you didn't do enough brainstorming, you might need to go back to the brainstorming part of your story. So this is the rough draft. I'm really eager to see what you write. Don't forget to include it in your, I'll have a puzzle piece for you to type it in. And I'm really looking forward to see what you come up with. Good luck, and reach out to your teachers if you need any help.